Okay, welcome everybody back to Steve Talks Boxing X, STBX. And this week we are talking about this Saturday's IBF World Heavyweight title clash in Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. And we're also going to briefly look at some of the undercard fights, well, all the undercard fights for predictions as well. And I'm pleased to say joining me this week is Luke from SimBoxx. Thanks for coming on, Luke.
How are we doing, my mate? Thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to talking boxing with you, and what a better fight to make my STBX debut than Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, 96,000 fans at Wembley. You know, happy to be on the show and happy to talk boxing as always.
Yeah, brilliant, Luke. Thanks for coming on. It's a massive fight, isn't it, really? My first question for you, Luke, was a bit behind the sort of the promotional posters, media. It's always been labelled Joshua versus Dubois. You know, Dubois, the champion. Shouldn't it be the other way around, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's an interesting sub-story, if you like. I think logic just suggests that Joshua's the A side, he's the bigger draw, and maybe that's overruled the fact that Daniel Dubois is the IBF champion, maybe the fact that he was upgraded to full champion after the fight was announced, I think. So maybe that played a part as well. But yeah, I think it'd come down to the fact that Anthony Joshua is the bigger name, the bigger draw.
Yeah.
And that would drive the promotion of the event.
Yeah, so basically, Anthony Joshua is the biggest seller, you know, of tickets and pay-per-views, rather than obviously Daniel Dubois is. So they've gone with the bigger name first. I'm sure there must be something in the back of Dubois' sort of mind, thinking, well, I'm the champ, I should be really first, but maybe, you know, they gave him a bit of extra money or something.
Money talks.
Money talks, yeah, definitely. So maybe they had a sweetener on that side of things. Maybe there's stuff like what ring entrance first and which corner to choose. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting part, like you say, because it is somewhat of a sub story. But you know, if Joshua walks second and then he's announced second in the ring, I think that would then look a bit more suspect and a bit more. But it depends on what Daniel's happy with. If he's just business-like and he's, you know, just give me my gloves, give me my boots, and I'll fight. You know, if he's not letting his ego run away with himself, then happy days. But if it is something that's caused a bit of debate, then if Joshua gets his own way with everything, you've got to start questioning yourself and being like, you know what, I'm going to put my foot down here, and if his name's first, then I'll walk second. And it reminds me of the days of Hay and Bellew, when they were going back and forth and whatnot.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. How far can they push it? You know, will everything be Joshua's way? He wants it. You know, from a psychological point of view, it may, you know, thinking Daniel Dubois maybe thinking in the back of his head, hang on, he's getting everything his way. You know, like you said, he may just be there. I just want to fight at the end of the day.
Yeah, he strikes me as a type that would be like that, Daniel, that he wouldn't be too fussed with out of the ring antics. That, you know, this is what I'm getting paid. This is when I'm fighting. Let's do a job. He strikes me as that kind of character. Yeah.
You mentioned a bit at the beginning, 96,000 at Wembley. It probably will be sold out, hopefully, by the end of the week. What do you think the fight atmosphere is going to be like?
Yeah, I think the fact that we've had these Saudi Arabian cards, these Riyadh season cards, they've been monster events, haven't they? You know, each and every one of them have been stacked. The fact that we've got one here in the UK, and it's at Wembley, and it's a heavyweight world title fight, and it's two big punchers, I think it's going to be phenomenal. You know, Liam Gallagher is going to be performing, so that brings the entertainment aspect into it, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. At Wembley for Joshua Klitschko and some of the other big fights, Tyson Fury, Dillian White, they was explosive. Never mind the main event plus a stacked undercard. I think it's going to be amazing. Amazing,
yeah. And you mentioned Liam Gallagher. Shame we didn't get Noel for the full treatment, but you know,
I'm a proud Mancunian, but I fall into the minority of I'm not an Oasis fan. I think, you know, if I'm out in the pub and Oasis are playing, you know, Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger, the Mancunian anthems, and I like the songs, but I'm not an Oasis fan. I wouldn't go to the reunion if you paid me.
Well, there you go. You've heard it first here on STBX. Luke doesn't like Oasis. There you go.
That can be the tagline. Never mind his wife.
Yeah. So Liam Gallagher or Noel Gallagher won't be on your Christmas card list, then I'll take it then.
Unfortunately not.
No. Going back to the fight itself, the guys used to spar each other back in the day. So did they kind of know what to expect from each other?
I think sparring, it's an old cliche, isn't it? And when these stories get leaked, you've kind of got to ask where the story's coming from, and if somebody's trying to gain a mental edge. I was watching the DAZN preview documentary earlier, and Joshua said, I think it's 15 guys that have said they've dropped me in sparring since I've hit the big time, if you like. Every man in his dog has dropped anti-Joshua, haven't they? I think David Price, was it Dueco, the American heavyweight, he apparently dropped him before Ruiz, and there's always a conspiracy theory behind Joshua, and I think
definitely Piccoli as well.
yeah, Coley's beat everybody, hasn't he?
Exactly.
Disputed heavyweight sparring world champion. Hopefully Billy Nelson doesn't hear that. I'm a good friend of Billy's. But yeah, I think ultimately sparring. I think if there was a one-sided whooping, maybe that could, but then again, I'm contradicting myself here, because if there was a one-sided spar, or somebody was dropped or stopped, or the spar was called off, you'd think that'd give him a mental edge. But going into Dubois against Ergovic, the story was that Ergovic gave him a bit of a beating in sparring, and as we went to see that played nothing fight night, So I guess it's gamesmanship, and it's one side trying to get one up on the other, I suppose. But I wouldn't look too far into it.
Yeah. Daniel's quoted, "If you want respect, go become a lawyer," to Joshua. Do you think he was being disrespectful when he was saying that?
No, all's fair in love and war, and if we go down the ages of some of the trash talking that's about in boxing, and has been throughout the years, Muhammad Ali, the greatest trash talker of all time, and Prince Naseem Hamed, Dillian White in the build-up to the Joshua fight, Tyson Fury, the king of the one-liners. I don't think boxing is the sport for you if you're going to get hurt with words out of the ring. But ultimately, all that aside, I don't actually think Daniel Dubois has been disrespectful. If Anthony Joshua or Daniel Dubois have been disrespectful. I think Daniel Dubois is finding his feet a little bit more, and maybe Don Charles and Kieran Farrell being around him, that they're bringing him out, and the results that he's had are bringing out more confidence.
And the character, isn't it? Because he's always been known to have a little bit of a dry sort of personality, wasn't he? Yeah.
I think the confidence is coming from the wins, and that maybe it's being construed with disrespect when it's not. It's just his confidence and his character building. He's only a young man, of course, especially for a heavyweight, 26, 27.
Yeah, 27,
grow and grow up in front of our very eyes. So I wouldn't take it as disrespect, and I'd be disappointed if Anthony Joshua or Team Joshua thought of it as disrespect.
Sure. Should Triple G already be, world champion, but that body shot against Usyk, what did you think of that one? Because it's been mentioned again, it's been regurgitated again and again, and obviously come fight time. What do you think?
Yeah, in terms of the actual punch, I look at it and I think different every time. Angles are everything. There's more angles of that shot than there is angles for an Instagram model. And I think, it's. If I was screaming for Daniel Dubois to win, if I had a bet on Daniel Dubois to win, then I'd be saying legal shot. And then if I was in Team Usyk, I'd be saying no, it was a low blow. It was what it was. I can understand each guy's or each team's argument, but they've got to let it go. There was stopping the 9th round, that fight. And Frank Warren says that Daniel Dubois give Usyk his toughest fight at heavyweight. Like, I don't know what fight he was watching. Daniel Dubois was somewhat competitive, but for me, he lost every round. And the way he went out in that fight was disappointing. We seen with Joe Joyce when he had the damage around his eyes, and whether it's me, you, or anybody, you can't tell a fighter when they've got that kind of injury, similar to Billy Joe Saunders against Canelo, where this might affect their sight, their vision for their life, never mind their boxing career. That there is bigger things at play. The Usyk one where he took the knee there and he was looking at the ref, similar to Ryan Garcia against Tank. That was a bit more suspect, a bit more questionable. So for me, it's laughable to say that it was Usyk's toughest fight at heavyweight. But I think they've got to let it go. They've got to let it go.
Yeah, me too. I agree, because it's been brought up miles too much recently. Is becoming a 3-time world champ more of a motivation than money for Joshua?
I think that's a really good question, because we know that Joshua he commands such attention across the board, you know, with Lucas Aid and Dre Beats and other sponsorship deals that he has. He's very, very comfortable. You know, his kids are never going to work, never going to have to lift a finger in their life. He's financially set a million times over. I genuinely believe Anthony Joshua fights for legacy. I think he fights for the buzz of these big fight nights. But that's not to say he'd fight for free. So I think it goes hand in hand. I think becoming three-time heavyweight world champion in a fight of this magnitude also brings
a lot of money.
So, yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. But ultimately, I think he's set for life. If he's fighting now, he's surely fighting for the love of the sport, because he could retire today, couldn't he? Let's be honest, he could have retired 5 years ago. Yeah,
basically the money he's earned throughout his career. I'm guessing, that's right. Ben Davison, obviously, AJ seemed to improve under him. Do you agree they're good together?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest, like with Ben Davison, back when he first got the breakthrough with Tyson Fury and Billy Joe Saunders, I didn't really get it. You know, he kind of come from nowhere. He had like a personal trainer background. He didn't really have that kind of boxing apprenticeship, if you like. You know, when a lot of these top trainers have been ex-pros or been around the game, and for Ben to come in at such an elite level, I was a bit skeptical. But you look at, the proofs in the pudding, the guys that he's worked with. Look at Lee Woodrunner form, and now with Anthony Joshua, and it's a match made in heaven, isn't it? I don't think anyone could be disappointed with the run of results, regardless of the opposition. You know, it's not just the results, but it's the manner of the results. I think, it's a partnership made in heaven.
Yeah. And I was going to say, obviously, Anthony Joshua's last two fights, I mentioned briefly on improvements, was against Wallin and Ngannou. Dubois was Hrgovic and Miller. Would you say Daniel's had the better running of quality of fighters? Would you say?
You know what? This is something that's been interesting to me. And when I was looking through things we was going to mention on the podcast, this was one question that I wanted to get into, because I think after the fact, on paper now, it looks like Daniel Dubois had the better two wins against Hrgovic and Miller. But heading into the fight with Otto Wallin, he was the bogeyman of the division. He'd give Tyson Fury hell. He'd just beat Murat Gassiev on away soil. And he was always looked at as a banana skin for Anthony Joshua. And then Joshua goes in there, does a job on him for 5 rounds, beats him from pillar to post, stops him on his stool. Then all of a sudden, Otto Wallin's not really that guy. And then same with Francis Ngannou. He was, millimeters away from becoming the first guy to beat Tyson Fury. Dropped him, and that was unbelievable. And then Joshua goes in there and does what any heavyweight boxer of their caliber should do to Francis Ngannou. So then we downplay Francis Ngannou's ability or standing, which was a crossover. I'm not going to dress that up. He done what he should have done against Francis Ngannou. Then with Daniel Dubois, Jarrell Miller, we all know about Jarrell Miller's escapades out of the ring. Is he actually that good? He's a good talker, and he brings a bit of controversy to the ring. And then Jarrell Miller could have won that fight. And during the middle rounds, Frank Warren shouting Daniel Dubois' dad to come over into the corner and to help motivate Daniel. And hats off to him. He goes and gets the stoppage, and it was a fantastic win. And then with Hrgovic didn't look right in that fight. And even in the first 3 rounds, he was tagging Daniel Dubois a hell of a lot with that right hand. Daniel Dubois didn't really show any kind of defense in those first 3 rounds. But then again, he went and got the best win of his career and stopped Hrgovic. So I think there's got to be a lot of context with both wins. I think if gun to my head, I'm saying Daniel Dubois on paper has got the better 2 wins, but taking into context both guys' performances and the way they come around, I think you'd say both guys have done what they should have done.
Sure. Going back to that Hrgovic fight with Dubois, did you expect him to do such a number on Hrgovic?
I thought that was a fight that could have gone either way. I'm not going to try and sit on the fence here. I was happy for Daniel Dubois to get the win, especially with having Kieran Farrell in his corner. The manner in which he done it, like I say, he had a tough start to the fight, and then he really put a beating on Hrgovic, and he made a right mess of his face. But heading into the fight, I thought Hrgovic was the next coming of Vladimir Klitschko. I thought he was going to be a real danger man. I thought he got a bit of a bit of a lucky one against Ilay Zhang when he beat Zhang on the cards. But other than that, I thought, he'd not really put a foot wrong, and he looked like he was the heir apparent to be in the mix with the heavyweight champions. Didn't turn out that way. I was disappointed with Hrgovic as much as I was delighted for Daniel Dubois, I think. Yeah.
And come to think of it, did you expect, I know you briefly spoke about this, AJ to have such an easy night against Ngannou? Consider, like you said earlier, Tyson Fury obviously didn't have such an easier night, to put it politely.
Steve, I don't want to be an after-timer here. I've got the receipts to prove it. I 100% expected Ante Joshua to win and win in that kind of fashion. I had 3 bets on that night, and the bets were Joshua round 1, Joshua round 2, Joshua round 3. I fully expected him to get him out there, so I've done all right off that. But I had a nice little win. Paid for the beers and whatnot that night. So I'm not going to be an after-timer and sit here and say, I fully expected it. I actually did, and I put a little bit of money where my mouth was, and fully expected him to dispatch of Francis Ngannou the way he did. And no disrespect to Francis Ngannou, because we all know that if it was in the octagon, it'd probably be Francis Ngannou dealing with Joshua just as quick, if not quicker.
Yeah, different story. That's right. Joshua at 34 now. Realistically, how many fights would you say he's got left in him?
I think this Riyadh season series of events and the potential for what Riyadh could do and the fights that they can put on has changed everybody's idea of when they might hang the gloves up. Let's not forget that 12, 18 months ago, Tyson Fury was retiring after every fight, wasn't he? He wasn't interested. And look at him now. He's fighting Usyk, he's fighting Ngannou, he's potentially fighting Joshua next year. Is that
purely a money thing then? Or
it's got to be, this is the one thing, let's have it right with the Riyadh season. I'm not going to go off on a tangent. I think what they're doing is good. But it is financially based, and rightly so. It's one of, if not the most difficult and dangerous sports in the world, and these guys deserve to get as much money out of the game before they retire as they can, because it's a short career. It's a 1% club that are able to earn life-changing money. We see all these small hall shows up and down the UK and around the world. Yeah. These guys are barely getting paid. If anything, they're selling tickets to get an opponent. So once fighters like Mark Chamberlain are getting these opportunities, then fair play. Go and get these big paydays. So it 100% is financially backed, but then it's also the opportunity of being on big cards amongst other great fighters.
Global audience as well, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So I think there's a multitude of reasons, but the main one being finance, and rightly so. I think for Ante Joshua, going back to my original point, I think if we was talking now without Riyadh season, I think we'd be saying 1 or 2 fights, maybe a Tyson Fury rematch, and then he's done. Now with what's available, you don't know, is Bakoli going to be up there, and Zhilei Zhang and these guys?
At one stage, maybe. You never know.
Pardon?
Maybe see Wilder, maybe at some stage.
Yeah, that's it. The potential to put a Wilder fight on. You could see Riyadh season in Nigeria and Africa, which would be a huge fight with Joshua and Bakoli. You could see Riyadh season China and put a big fight on in Beijing with Zhilei Zhang. Yeah. So I think these fights that were fantasy fights, as we've already seen with what's been and what's to come, that anything's possible. You don't actually know what's going to come with Riyadh season, and that's what makes it so exciting. So long story short, I'm not quite sure what Joshua has left, because the possibilities and the opportunities that might come his way are totally different than what was here 18 months ago.
Sure. What about if Joshua loses? Where does he go from there?
I think that would push me more to think that he could have a shorter, in a weird way, a shorter time left in the sport if he was to lose, because he's riding the crest of a wave, some fantastic stoppages. If he was to win against Dubois, 3-time heavyweight world champion, he's primed for a shot at undisputed and a revenge over Usyk if Usyk was to defeat Fury in December. Realistically, if he was to lose, that goes back to you. I think that would tie into your previous question of glory or is it money? Because if he was to lose, a Wilder fight still sells. A Fury fight still sells. Would he then go and fight maybe a Dillian White again? But
it's just the money motivation there. It's nothing. Obviously, the title was gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Is he really going to look to rebuild at that stage? I think that's something that's being massively overlooked here, because Joshua is such a big favourite, and he's expected to beat Dubois and go into a trilogy fight with Usyk or the highly touted fight with Tyson Fury. I think what next for Joshua is being spoken about as if the win's already in the bag, and not too much being made of what's next if he loses. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree as well. That there'd be a lot of thinking, wouldn't they, if that did happen from Joshua's team, I think, and himself, really. With regards to, 20 knockouts, 23 fights, Dubois, does he stand a puncher's chance, do you think?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, with that kind of power.
Yeah.
With that kind of power, and I don't mean this in it, because normally when you say, there's a 50-1 on favourite, and he's taking on another fighter that's got, a 10-32 record, and you say, he's got a puncher's chance because it's heavyweight boxing. So I don't mean he's got a puncher's chances in that's all he's got. I think he's a live dog in there, Daniel Dubois, but his power is there, and it's unquestionable. Both guys are great athletes, and Daniel Dubois will always have a puncher's chance against anybody.
Yeah,
but he's more than just a puncher's chance in this fight.
More than a puncher's chance. Okay, how do you see the fight going?
So I think it's a tentative opening round, and then I think it's a battle of the jabs. Both guys are weirdly similar in terms of they're not a Usyk or a Fury, where they're quite slippery, quite tricky, and are able to fiddle and dazzle and move like middleweights. They're quite similar in the fact that they can move. They've got good feet, they've got speed, they've got power. So I think they match up quite well. I think it's a battle of the jabs early on, and who dominates with the jab will then open up opportunities to land the real big punches, which is for both guys the right hand, the backhand, and that's where for me the fight explodes into life, and I think it becomes a shootout at that point.
Sure. You think it's going to come just a battle of the right hands at one stage? Do you think?
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see both guys go down or at least be in serious trouble in this fight. Okay. Such is both guys' power. Yeah, and I think a lot's been made of Frank Warren's going to bang his drum for Dubois the same way Eddie Hearn's banging the drum for Anthony Joshua. And Simon Jordan said it as well about PTSD for Anthony Joshua, and that if he was to get hit and get hurt, that will he go back to a dark place and will he be able to recover?
Yeah.
But Cooper told him that that was regarding Andy Ruiz back in 2018, 2019. If we're talking, heart, resilience, and battling adversity, Daniel Dubois has done it twice against Joyce and against Usyk, where he struggled to overcome adversity. So if it comes down to a question of heart, I think both guys are questionable there. And I think yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think they're equally as fragile as each other. I don't think the chinny, I don't think the shot in any stretch of the imagination. I think both guys are in the form of their careers. But what makes them evenly matched in power, speed, accuracy, timing, I think they're also evenly matched in terms of questions over desire and the will to win if they get hurt. I think that's what's going to make it more exciting if they do both touch the canvas and it becomes, Dubois down in the third and Joshua's down in the fourth. And what's going to happen next?
Exactly. That's an interesting point, Luke, is who wants it more. Going on to your prediction for the fight, hit me with it. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any secret to those that follow me on social media. I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan, but taking that out of it, because I like Daniel Dubois, and as I mentioned previously, Kieran Farrell, who's his second trainer, or he's certainly part of that team. Massive fan of Kieran Farrell. He's helped SimBoxx throughout the years, especially when we're starting off getting access to his fighters in his gym. So, I wouldn't say I'm picking Anthony Joshua just because I'm a fan of Anthony Joshua, but just looking at it logically, I think Joshua's that bit better than Daniel Dubois in every department. I think he punches a little bit harder. I think he's a little bit more accurate. I think he's a little bit faster. And ultimately, I think Anthony Joshua knocks out Daniel Dubois in an absolute firefest. And it'll be an emphatic knockout. And I think Anthony Joshua wins by knockout inside 6-7 rounds.
6-7 rounds, okay. That'd be good for the people attending then. Hopefully a shorter night after Liam Gallagher sung his songs and people just want to see the fight. So I think people would pray for a shorter night rather than a cards victory anyway.
What about yourself, Steve?
I've got a show coming up.
Okay,
I will review, or with Darren? We've got a show coming up, our prediction show on that.
Okay.
So what go just yet? Who would you like? Obviously, you said Joshua's going to win. Who would you like to see him fight next, realistically?
It's the easiest question you'll ask me all show. It's Tyson Fury. And it's been Tyson Fury for the past 5 years. Yeah. That fight has to happen.
Yeah. Okay, that is an easy question. I think lots of fans still want to see that fight, regardless of the outcome of Fury versus Usyk. I think the fans will still want to see Fury versus Joshua.
Yeah,
after that.
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I still think there's interesting options because of the way the heavyweight divisions unfolded. You know, somebody like an Ajit Kabayel 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we would have frowned at Ajit Kabayel as an opponent for
Not
Joshua. Now he's incredible with the wins he's got. Mark Nicola, the credible opponent, Zhilei Zhang, of course, and even the Joseph Parker rematch. So I think there's other options there. But the number one pick is Tyson Fury, and then there's a big drop to other credible opponents. Yeah,
there's still plenty of good fights out there.
Yeah.
We're going to quickly go through the undercard fights with you, Luke. I want your predictions for them. First one being Mark Chamberlain versus Josh Padley. Who do you reckon wins that one? Is that a silly question?
Yeah, I think you've got to favour Mark Chamberlain. And you know, all due respect to Padley, I'm not massively up on his career. I'm buzzing for him that he's got this opportunity on such a platform. But Mark Chamberlain is a brilliant fighter. I love this story of him being Turki Al-Sheikh's favourite fighter. I think he's a plasterer by trade, and this has changed his life massively. And I think there's big plans for Mark Chamberlain, and I think he's looked fantastic. And you know, he's not just one of these fighters that are getting the opportunity, getting the big paydays, and not performing. You know, everything's going on an upward trajectory, and he's looked fantastic so far. And I think he gets the winner here by stoppage early as well.
And late change, Ishmael Davis versus Josh Kelly. Obviously, Liam Smith pulled out with a virus. How do you see that one going?
See, this for me now is a difficult one to predict because it is such a late change of opponent. I think there was murmurs and rumours and whispers on social media that Liam Smith was out of this fight at the back end of last week. So the fact that they've took till now to announce this replacement.
On the documentary, or the gloves are off documentary, he didn't look even near weight, even for that. So
yeah. I think I'd slightly edge Josh Kelly on what we've seen, but I think Ishmael Davis is a fantastic prospect, beating Troy Williamson last time out in a career best performance.
Yeah, the back end of that fight, wasn't it? That's his last fight out.
So I'd have to slightly go 60-40 in favour of Josh Kelly on points.
Okay. Joshua Buatsi versus Willie Hutchinson.
I think this is a great fight. Willie Hutchinson, when he stops against Lennox Clark, and then he's kind of had this comeback, and he got the fight with Craig Richards, and I thought Craig Richards would stop him, and he put on maybe the performance of the night on that 5v5 card. But I think Joshua Buatsi, even though his career seems to stall and it's not quite got where we thought it was going to get, I think he's a level above Willie Hutchinson, if I'm being honest. But Willie Hutchinson's going to give it a real go, and I think that'll be his undoing, because if he gets into a shootout with Buatsi, he'll get took out, and I think Joshua Buatsi wins that by stoppage in the second half of the fight.
Sure. Okay. Anthony Kakachi against Josh Warrington. Just found out it's not for the IBF title.
I think we could do a whole podcast on the IBF situation because what Joe Cordina went through beforehand, and now this, and the Jaya Pataya cruiserweight, what he went through with the IBF, it's bizarre. But we're looking at it as a fight, and I'll predict it as a fight. I think Warrington, is on the decline. He's been a brilliant servant to British boxing, but I think Kakachi will get him out of there.
Yeah, and this one, I like this one as well. Hamza Shiraz against Tyler Denny. Fair play to Denny taking it again. You talk about stories. He's had a brilliant story behind him as well. How do you see that one going?
I think Hamza Shiraz is a special talent, arguably one of the best British boxing talents not to have won a world title yet. I think he's that good. He's got the frame as well, where I think he'll go middleweight world champion, super middleweight world champion, maybe even like heavyweight world champion. He's a big man. Tyler Denny's on a great run of form, and in such a sport as boxing, where it can be a bit dirty and a bit wrong, and people getting backstabbed and people not getting what they deserve. Tyler Denny is a real feel-good story, and the run of form that he's on, beating Felix Cash, amongst others. In fights, I think every fight that he's won, he's been the underdog in this run to becoming European champion. But I think the feel-good story comes to an end on Saturday night. Hamza Shiraz is that good, and no disrespect to Tyler Denner, but I think Tyler Denner will have a gutsy performance, but Hamza Shiraz will stop him. Hamza Shiraz is that good.
Yeah, he's a class fighter, isn't he, really? So, but yeah, that's it for very much the show. Thanks, Luke, for coming on. Really appreciate your feedback there and your time. Again, please support the channel your best you can with likes, subscriptions, and comments. Please comment if you agree with Luke's predictions as well. And yeah, I appreciate your time, Luke, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Steve, and thanks for everyone for watching. If you can pop over to the SimBoxx YouTube channel while you're here, give us a subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. And yeah, thanks for watching.
I'll put all the details in the bottom of the video as well for you, Luke. Brilliant. Thanks, Luke.
Cheers, mate.